Sabres and Blue Jackets tonight. Little bit on that, lot on JJ Peterka. What is the ceiling for Peterka? Let's really dive in on just how good he could really be this year. That's coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Sneaky Joe DiBiase coming to you on a game day of sorts, like it is preseason game number 2 against Columbus tonight. It's a double game day because the Bills are in action tonight at 7:30 on Monday Night Football against the Jaguars, which of course will get much more attention here locally, but we're here for you if you're looking for what happens in the Columbus game or getting you ready for the Columbus game. We'll spend the first segment of today's show on the game. The second and third segment, I want to dive more into JJ Peterka. Just different conversations I have had with people, like really trying to figure out, okay, could he be the best player on the Sabres? Could he be a all-star? Could he be a top-level player in the league? I think exploring what Peterka could be is a fascinating question right now, and I really want to get into that for most of today's show. So if you are listening to this after Sabres and Blue Jackets and still want to get some good content out of it, then you could skip ahead to the second segment. But we will talk a little bit about the Blue Jackets and an injury update today on Rasmus Dahlin to start the show. So that's coming up. Sneaky Joe DiBiase on today's show. As always, if you want to get your voice heard on the show, or you've got a comment or a question to get through during a game or just during the day, be sure to become a member of our Locked On Sabres text club. If you're not a subscriber already, super easy. You just go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. You sign up there, and then you're good to go, and we're just texting back and forth from there on out. And looking through the text line a little bit today, a lot of, Dahlin is back. Whew. A lot of few, right? The PHEW was the most common text I think I got back today when we sent out the update from practice that Rasmus Dahlin was back on the ice, skating hard, looked like he was doing pretty much everything. So the Dahlin injury scare appears to already be over. Maybe not 100% until we actually see him play in a game setting. He will not play in this game tonight against Columbus. But, man, what a bullet dodged by the Sabres, because there's no player I think they could afford to lose less than Rasmus Dahlin. Almost any other position. If they had lost, knock on wood, none of this happens. If they had lost Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, I mean, I'm a big Devin Levi guy, so I might sit there and tell you, like, okay, I'm okay. Devin Levi and James Reimer is my third. He was a number 2 last year in Detroit. I can get by without him. If they were to lose, Thompson would be tough, right? Because I just don't know how much goal scoring this team has. So Thompson would be maybe right there neck and neck with Dahlin. If they were to lose Jack Quinn again, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. It's like, all right, I still haven't seen it yet anyway. Maybe Yuri Kulik can step in. Whereas Dahlin missing Byram and Power, I'm optimistic about their ceilings. I don't think their ceilings are where Dahlin is, though. I don't think anybody replaces what Dahlin does, who plays. Remember, he sometimes plays up to 30 minutes a night. The top Sabre forwards are only playing 18, 19, 20 minutes a night on average. So I think him being on the ice more often, him controlling the power play, him bringing that physical element, I think he's probably going to be their captain. I just think Dahlin is all around their best player, their most important player, and they definitely could not afford to lose him in this one. So the Sabres roster, though, for tonight's game, before we even get into that, Columbus's roster, which looking through that, I got that in front of me right now, and there's really not a lot of NHL guys. It's kind of a mix for Columbus's roster tonight. It's more NHL players than what you saw from Pittsburgh on Saturday. Cole Sillinger will be in the lineup for Columbus. Adam Fantilli will be in the lineup. Jack Johnson will be in the lineup. David Juracek will be in the lineup. But otherwise, you do have a lot of call-up guys. I think the Cleveland Monsters maybe are their affiliate. You're going to see a lot of guys that are on that team. Versus the Sabres, who are once again basically going with their NHL lineup. Couple of subtle changes. Alex Tuck, for instance, won't play in this game. Lucas Rusek won't play in this game. And you are seeing Ryan McLeod for the first time, number 71 out there. So that'll be interesting to see. You're going to see Jason Zucker out there for the first time. But otherwise, and Dennis Gilbert will play instead of Jacob Bryson. And Devin Levi will play instead of Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. But that's really it. Otherwise, you're getting Lafferty again. You're getting Obe Kubel again. You're getting Malenstein again. Actually, you're not getting... Oh, you are getting Malenstein. Yep. Quinn, Peterka will be in the lineup. Cousins, Benson, Tage will be in the lineup. So you are getting a heavy NHL lineup from the Sabres once again, which should make it an interesting game. 5 o'clock puck drop, by the way, on a Monday night game where the Bills play. I'm not expecting there to be many people in that arena, which is completely understandable. I talked about this, though, with Brian Mazurowski from WBEN. We were talking this morning off air about he has season tickets, the Sabres. Like, yeah, I sold my tickets, $5, right? $5 per ticket. So he sold his tickets. And I'm like, to him, like, I can't even believe you got $5 for that. And he said, yeah, but he made a good point. He's like, if I were still single and I had the night to myself, kind of, it's actually not a bad night. You go to the Sabre game at 5, right? You go watch the first 2 periods, and then you duck out at the beginning of the third or sometime in the third, and you just walk over the ramp to Southern Tier, the big screen, formerly 716, and all those TVs, all that space. I mean, I'm sure it's super busy, but that's actually a nice little night. So maybe we will get some fans doing that in the arena tonight. Watch the Sabre preseason game, head over. There's other bars in that area too. They'll go watch the Bills game thereafter. I might even take that up as an idea myself. So Sabres and Blue Jackets tonight at 5 o'clock, and we'll watch the game for you. If you're going to be tuned in on the Bills game and you're looking for a recap, be sure to come back tomorrow and we'll fill you in on everything we saw from Sabres and Blue Jackets. Okay, when we come back, though, the meat of what I want to get to today, following his hat trick on Saturday in the preseason opener, let's really dive in on JJ Peterka. I've got a couple of questions that I want to cover about Peterka. One is how high his ceiling is. Another, this is a text question I got today about when they should pay Peterka is interesting, and whether they should do that right now before the price goes way up. That's coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. We got something new and exciting to talk to you about today. PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. For example, 1 Josh Allen passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. Excuse me, not Josh Allen, Caleb Williams. I got the Bills on the brain. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every weekend, football weekend in September. PrizePicks invented the flex play. So that means you can still cash out if your lineup that you put together isn't perfect. You could double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. So download the PrizePicks apps today. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNHL for PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. This episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast also brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps your quality candidates find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen. You should definitely make your second listen if you're ready for the Bills, or if you want a preview of Bills, check out Locked On Bills with Joe Marino. Or if you want to come back for what happened in the game tomorrow, Joe will have his instant reactions as well. Locked On NHL, if you're looking for more of a league-wide perspective, getting ready for the hockey season. Sabres and Blue Jackets tonight at 5 o'clock. Let's dive in, though, on JJ Peterka. He was one of the big stories, maybe the biggest story of Saturday's preseason opener against Pittsburgh. He was probably the thing you felt the best about coming out of last season. There weren't many. How many great things were there to feel good about after last year? You had a couple. You didn't feel great about the coach, and he got fired. You didn't feel great about Tage. He had a down year. Didn't feel great about Cousins. He had a collapse last year, I would call it. You didn't feel great. Dahlin even regressed last year. Tuck regressed. Skinner regressed. Everybody regressed. You know who went up? Really, there's two guys to come to mind. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen did that. And JJ Peterka absolutely did that. Finishing the season with 28 goals, 22 assists, was the only Sabre last year that played all 82 games. And Peterka, who started off the season on the second line, finally got a shot on the first line at the end of the year with Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch, and he absolutely thrived. The ability that he showed while playing with those two was unbelievable. The speed all those three had together, the skill that they had all together, and Peterka, he had a stretch between, it was a 5-game stretch from March 21st last year to April 2nd, where he had a 6-game stretch, where he had 7 goals. 7 goals in a 6-game stretch playing on that line. And Peterka, you saw the finish, you saw the speed, you saw, I thought, more instincts that showed up for Peterka. He was definitely someone that I thought understood spacing on the ice a lot better last year than he did the year before. Because remember, in his rookie year, there was a long stretch in the middle of that season. While the Sabres were trying to make the playoffs, there was a long stretch of time where he did basically nothing for them. But he got there. Last year, he got there. And there are some advanced numbers that I want to get to on background about Peterka before we get into what his ceiling might be. His ceiling, though, this is where the conversation starts for me about how good could he really be. I remember I mentioned this on the show last year that I was at a Sabre game in Bulldog from WGR, just kind of half kidding, offhand, just goes, I think he might be Kucherov. And that name hit me Kucherov. I have not thought for a second. At that point in time, I had not thought for a second about Peterka being a star player. And this was maybe right in that run at the end where he was looking dominant. But, you look at it and you say, okay, what do I got here? I got a second-round pick who was 34th overall, so close to a first-round pick, that dominated in Europe for a year, then was great in Rochester, then was okay in his first year with the Sabres, but there was definitely some inconsistency. And then last year, he took the big jump, 28 goals. Is there another step coming? And if so, how big is it and how many more jumps are coming for JJ Peterka? Here is one number that might go to signal, hey, there's more here. Peterka has yet to produce on the power play. He was really maybe the guy. I mean, he did not get almost any time on the first unit last year. And two, the Sabres had one of the worst power play coaches maybe in the league in Matt Ellis that was running the show. So what did it amount to? 3 power play goals last year. Peterka scored 25 goals at even strength. That number, by the way, even strength goals, 25 on the season, that ranked in the NHL. Excuse me, 5-on-5, not just even strength. I guess you could count 4-on-4 and that would be count as well. But 5-on-5 goals in the NHL last year. JJ Peterka was tied for 12th in the NHL with Brady Tkachuk. Yeah, a star player in the league. Peterka had the same amount of 5-on-5 goals last year as Sidney Crosby. Crosby more of a playmaker, but whatever. Sidney Crosby. He had more goals at 5-on-5 than William Nylander, Kyle Connor, who is a known goal scorer in the NHL, Jordan Kyrou, Kirill Kaprizov, Nikita Kucherov, who we just talked about, JT Miller, Sam Reinhart, Mr. 50 goals. He had more 5-on-5 goals than Reinhart did. He had more than Tyler Seguin, more than, here you go, Connor McDavid. He had more 5-on-5 goals than Connor McDavid, more than Evgeny Malkin, on and on and on. The list, I mean, the amount of names are impressive. The only names that had more than him, this is an impressive list: Austin Matthews, Nathan McKinnon, Zach Hyman, Artemi Panarin, Braden Point, David Pastrnak, Philip Forsberg, Jonathan Marchessault, Trevor Moore, by the way. Big surprise there. I didn't think I'd see him on that list. Mikko Rantanen and Niels Hoglander. That's it. Those are the only players in the league that had more 5-on-5 goals than Peterka, who was going into his second season. Not really even a full-time veteran yet. Well, I guess full-time, but his ice time is still a lot lower than those guys, a lot of them. And remember, he played a lot of the year without one of his line mates. Jack Quinn was not on the ice, and he was playing with Benson, who was an 18-year-old rookie, or he was playing with Victor Olofsson, right? He didn't get to play with Tuck and Thompson for a whole season. So start putting all that together. 12th in the NHL in 5-on-5 goals. A better power play coach this year in Seth Appert. He's getting number 1 power play time as opposed to number 2 power play time. He's going to play more than 16 minutes a night. That might go up to 18, 19 minutes a night. His quality of line mate's going to go up, playing with Thompson and Tuck. So opportunity by volume is going up. Opportunity by quality is going up for Peterka. And I've already got numbers that show, at least at even strength, he's one of the best goal scorers in the league already. And there he is in night 1 getting a hat trick. And didn't you think, man, this guy, he could be the Sabres' best forward? I thought it for a second because we've seen Tage do it. We've not seen Peterka hit that level. But I am ready to finally say, because I don't know that I've ever thought even up till a couple weeks ago that, man, that's really in there. That all-star potential for him. I think it might be there. What isn't there for him? He's got every tool in the tool bag for offensive game. His hands, his shot, his speed, his quickness side to side, his ability as a skater overall. Now the mind is starting to match all that. I think Peterka could absolutely have a 40-goal season this year. I don't think that's that crazy at all. Again, opportunity by volume goes up, opportunity by quality goes up, and that's an extra 12 goals off of last year. And that will establish him as one of the stars of the league. You know, can he be, I'm not ready to say or maybe I never will be, that he can be a Kucherov level player. But look around this division. Every team's got star players. Every team. Florida's got a bunch. Tampa's got a bunch. Toronto's got a bunch. The Sabres have a bunch of good players. Do they have a lot of star players? No. They don't. By league standards, how many of their guys are, NHL Network lists are silly, I know, but the top 20 lists at each position. How many Sabres are on those lists? Dahlin's on the defenseman list. Thompson was on the center list for a year. And that's it. Nobody else is making those lists right now. Best wingers in the league. Peterka's not on that list right now. There's no other Sabre winger that is. But he might have it in him. Then a year, in 2 years, you're just offhand look at Twitter and, look, the top 20 wingers in the NHL. And there's JJ Peterka's name at number 13. I don't know. I'm not saying he could be a Kucherov level player. I'm wondering if there could be a Willie Nylander level jump in Peterka that has him being considered one of the better wingers in hockey. I think it might be real possible, and I don't really see a good reason to say no to that right now. Like why that wouldn't happen. You know? I kind of see everything's kind of coming together for him at once. There's no part of his game that I want to pick apart and say this, and this, or why he can't do it. There's no physical attribute to me that he doesn't have. I mean, I guess he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's not tiny. He's 6'1", 189. That's fine. It's average size winger in the NHL. So keep an eye on Peterka for the star power that could establish itself this year. And maybe he's a guy that could be the Sabres' leading goal scorer. Now, that presents another question that a texter brought up to me on our text line today. If all that's true, or if he's headed for that type of season, shouldn't they pay him right now? Get to that when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We're presented here on the show by FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL fans start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And of course, I mean, tonight's your night. And if you're a Bills fan, you've got Bills, Jaguars coming a little bit later on. You got a doubleheader, by the way, for Monday night. So you got two games that you can take a look at if you want to parlay something. So when you get a hunch the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets with your live action during a game. You'll get started with $200 of bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com to get started today. Final segment here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Let's get into Peterka for more of an advanced question, but it could pertain to right now. And this is a question from a texter of ours, should the Sabres consider paying Peterka right now? And you know what? It's not something I'd been thinking about. Not a question that I've really considered. Like, hey, shouldn't they get this done? And I guess kind of like trying to figure out like what his ceiling is. I don't have a reason against it. I don't have a good reason to tell you why they shouldn't do it right here and right now. Peterka's in the final year of his contract before he would then be a restricted free agent. The Sabres, I think, would do well to pay Peterka right now because he, more than anybody, is probably primed for that breakout season. So let's get into the numbers a little bit. This is all guesswork, but if you were to pay Peterka right now, what type of number do you think he'd take? I think you probably have to give him $7 million a year to get the ball rolling, even to get in the room on a negotiation like that. But $7 to $7.5 million, you're kind of paying for what's ahead. That's a good bet to make, I think, on Peterka right now, because I think he will absolutely realize that level of play. He'll be a $7 to $7.5 million player for a lot of that contract. Now, if you don't pay him, and he has that 40-goal type of season we've been talking about, now you're north of, are you at 9? Are you at 9? You might be around $9.5 million if he has a season like that. It'd be a tough one. The one thing I wonder about the Sabres not doing it right now and why they might not, and here we are on September 23rd, I don't see an indication that they are about to do it. It would kind of be out of left field, I think, if they announced it today or tomorrow. Maybe a factor here is because they've already paid so many guys early. And they just don't feel like they want to do it again. They want to, with one guy, let's take the risk and let's make sure this guy is the goods before we're willing to pay the check. Because, hey, at the moment, the Dylan Cousins contract is burning them. If he's going to play like he did last year, that's going to be a disaster of a contract. Matthias Samuelsson, he's doing fine, but he's got to stay healthy. Or else, if he was up for contract right now, I don't think they'd pay him 7 years, $4.5 million a year. How can you trust him with the health? They haven't got burned. It's just, two of those long-term deals so far are like, I don't know if that feels great right now. And maybe they just want to hold out on Peterka. Maybe they feel like the group isn't yet deserving of another long-term extension. I don't think that's the way you should make a decision, though. I wonder if it is bleeding into how they're deciding. But in essence, whether Peterka, you want to pay him or not, or whether he's worth that, should have nothing to do with the rest of the team. The team didn't make the playoffs again. What are you going to do? If they don't make the playoffs this year, you're not going to pay Peterka next year? I can't see that happening. So it's an interesting question. Let me know what you think. And also throw me a text, throw me a tweet on what number you think you would offer Peterka to try to get that done right now. That's going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Share your thoughts on Peterka. Share your thoughts on Sabres and Blue Jackets tonight, 5 o'clock puck drop at KeyBank Center. And we'll talk to you tomorrow after the Bills game and after the Sabres game. You get a little double night of action tonight for the Sabres and the Bills. Be sure to check out Locked On Bills when their game is done as well. Check out Locked On Sabres if you missed out on Sabres Blue Jackets, which I'm sure a lot of fans will end up missing out on. And we're here for you on that front. Thanks for listening to Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.